Teamwork.
Okay. Everyone settled, good to go. Right. You look good? Actually, Alright, everyone good? Alright. Contention was nuclear monitoring, military monitoring, institution, birth, United, military nations, blood, underground, genocide, reading, nuclear sense, equation, explain, goals, use, budget, destiny, answer, by USA, evasion, activity, possible, given, use, function, destiny, protected, all identified as non-nuclear, complete, consistently jumping, identified as explosion, small balls, and from possible senses of the chance for signals on nuclear, creatures, by earthquake, nuclear, to be lost for noise. The effective reputation creates deals that stop roller for not 13 US and no 14 close to the or body, issues, body, reputation, regardless of the service, you know, that's all. That's what I'm telling you. The body uses one of the session sounds or the launchers without the executive covering target missile production, future fuel reversing missile program. No stream flow is coming out. Effective reputation increases missile defense measures in the region to counter those fear. Clear fucking rating in region not to go nuclear arsenal remaining facility for the system. This information on everything including specialty verification and improvable evidence with high South Korea and Japanese concerns of usability, concealing in the model, regimes use of barrel increase, it affects by willingness and CO2, and for instance, defense and DLA for open attacking between the world, assistance South Korea, US confidence of defense, missile defense systems to drug roll and de-escalate conflict, and by my name, South Korea should participate in US missile defense and cooperative forces, South Korea's defense will be part of US and combined South Korea with the US defense protecting South Korea using operations like having drug systems, urban war capabilities, and enhanced by US assets, missile defense cooperation, all the US would have a different effect showing the raw US Washington equal South Korea's three vehicles and Swedish formation, language China is replaced by pollution pressure and the image of that is linked to genetic research subject. You can come to the and all that, can use the language in China to solve the Korean nuclear program, nuclear trade, which under Russia and China has leveraged the time of China with the point that would enhance rates of management for the nuclear biological chemical weapons, but for both of them, the means of sharing and deterring also acting to the point that outside concepts and the first result will be the US and Japan will be positioned next time security limits. North Korea makes copies of global nuclear war against 13. North Korea is militation coalition American plus making self recognize size and defense attack in the recent war against the South plus making plus understand and plus screen or nuclear missiles for fully fast line, including these ones with the mobilization of US missile, shot economic destabilization could be US and China or the institutional economic connections for North Korean proliferation guarantees war through counter-value and here total war rotate. 13. North Korea nuclear forces model for push right now, while the counter nuclear will seek a second right first force was right to Chinese for hearing survivability story. One model missiles and tunnels. North Korea may not launch on one forces on here trigger. North Korea will move for South Korea making it easier to launch on shorter. North Korea leading a to lose. No electric use case causes nuclear conflict. 14. Before reaching bad states like second fight states might have the incentive of using first being they would be damaged by the flood first fight states with also like feeling use of liquid pressure Russian deterrence theory there's no jersey will states have common features including single cores that first reason by law to be nuclear Russian judging not for use opening conflict the Chinese fight by use against US weapons using increasing risk of nuclear terror reliance they got the duty for all types of nuclear uses contrasting weapons using because they might be more of that a safety cost resulting in use of more powers contribute abilities, providing over in every state and region more like Russian is more than stable like a Georgian conflict, as well as spread to the policy contended to US particle physics. Increasing gyros of geoscientific data leads to more accurate video earthquake forecasting, geological society 12 forecast, earthquake zero for earthquakes and model because the resource indicated high probability that earthquake happens small with a time spread count, but complexity of real estate data, and sensor observation, geoscientific authority needs authorities to ensure those used to mid-5 data are likely to take birth roles are going to find individual confidence they can operate by which means professional science. Natural disaster increases the spread of disease, only effective preparedness takes off Guado, 12 disaster, cause health facilities to strong immunization, prevents diseases, and transmission of long disaster associated with displaced population increase, bigger being exposure to a proliferation of disease factors and other Sanitation, hygiene, we go to reports, earthquake disasters, the most important disease risk, the impact is extinction, problems, while touching, can swallow from people from animals, high to people through your plus of the very much efficient, and populations, this is compared to true burnout and self-interest, check, has double 12. Recent that it's provide evidence for ability to cause senior public responsible for the extinction of human species, violence, and provides the environment ability to host such strong pathogens as possible. These will never without hard return to natural habitat and possibility. It also natural disasters increases in numbers of refugees, causes conflict, war, and migration, induced by refugees, both conflicts involving potential conflict over resources, white migration, both migration might offset war, economic losses, increase on by those three conflicts and where refugees are used for government patterns, especially in the context of earthquakes. 1d10, refugees flee from natural disasters, earthquakes, or still dislocation, people change situation, but this year's emission resources can create that by bringing this to the right of unstable states cause great power wars. We will die. Areas are characterized by state of for great competition. Interest of these is the south of the region and south and we do the presence of other powers. This power continues their relationship with the U.S. and your war, Georgia show a sense of great competition over the state of the state. They follow this thing. Become like a power by considering by those things they are a way of standing for all we do. Desire, but there's other terms which weakness and exploitation. Thus, the plan the United States federal government should substantially increase its deployment of portable ocean activity transit tankers, including but not limited to off the coast of Hawaii. The three assaults. Ocean-based junior shear research, including high keto tanker junior shear measurements, dive 14 pipe across all its reduce the estimated amount of fluctuations, sensitivities to measuring oceanic areas because the oceanic crust is thinner, crust flux of deep chemical locations, small oceanic measurement could reduce uncertainty of mass flux to successfully discriminate between earth models from molten site, oceanic measurement test structural structures, removal from ambient noise base, portable deep ocean factors necessary to overcome uncertainties in size boundary. You have 8. There are large uncertainties outside which hinders progress in the south between geophysical principal county and the nutrient emission will be transformed into discovery information on those that try to play the political and global ocean based on the analysis to measure single in the ocean root contents of the same by single from within the earth. Now, only I can treat detectors can create accurate detection to eliminate sample uncertainty. Run 3-9. Explosion quantity is important with 6 BT and the detectors are unaffected subjects of explosion and competitive device good. Detection of one entity distributed coincidences with no first at the bus was the detector of several a distributed offers explosion location makes detectors for to stand up detection goals provide transform additional capabilities for CTBT verification. Generic reps routines assume a representational determinants of the particularized and surrounding context of how a reps are deployed. Geopolitical measuring emergencies are conveyed by reps, however particular reps do not lead particular responses to get mass, but effectively argue there is no causal relationship between a specific intervention which the category will display one challenge the visual determination of image information of getting that's not an images but on idiosyncratic values. Particularity is the best standard. Point for me. Small to right of possible interpreting best while living plans are always continued to do such can contact critical period. We do not research at best with continued claims made specifically in relation to particular phenomena at a particular at a particular time. Based on particular projection of BT does not go with small t. The act is true in the specific context. No one size fits all theory. Owing to this philosophical term has a tendency prior to this model response to a variable rational choice to remain on this economy. It will be the practice of this model very constructing approach to IMS, substance pursuit generally over visibility, representation of on this model solutions. The idea that there can only be one direct approach to getting rises, image reflected, iron exasperating, dangerous and visual cycle rises. If we don't engage in stereotypes of elite fulfilling fits them in 7, where analysis of sound person research decision makers still avoid decision makers without taking worst case 2016 please don't maybe once more rather than figure out subject to analysis regarding the application to strategic concepts they remain only rather than rational judgment. Prediction and scenario planning are inevitable. Dancing, another potential prediction is deeply embedded in DoD essence or broad stages of the true quest for safety because when for nothing about future nature to ensure thinking results of whether it was very much like a contribution we have planned to time to our work in the focus of the design of search to continue to what we did by joint our status the American military is particularly disappointed well to the mindset of we heard identify the system of our unexpected contingencies. Now, reps don't change policy riches in aid. The effect of it just too far that they do not overturn policy meaning, born against 90% power of imaging and measurement of influence on images of policy decisions is part of my determinism is unproven. Reps are presumptively believing in negotiate reality, functional this is not long uses that images and generally powerful. The strong side is in the evacuation for traditional thought predisposed against the power of images, of course, leaves in line independent power of images, which is how visual determinism is regularly voiced.
We got this part, right?
Yeah.
Hey, your laptop's gonna fall.
Oh.
Please grab this place.
I'm sorry.
All right, let's try this first contention. You say that nuclear modification, that there are 4 cases for why you need to, I guess, right? What are those 4 cases?
I'm not sure I understand this question.
Like the first part you read on case was that there are 4 cases in which the leak, I guess, with MC on.
The first card makes the argument that current proliferation detection techniques in the status quo are failing.
You say 4 cases solved. What are those 4 cases?
What do you mean 4 cases?
I mean, the indictments in the card say 4 cases prove that. I'm asking what
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. All right.
I can read you what it's saying. Exoatmospheric detection, EMC detector, space-based detectors, and radio.
It's basically citing the proliferation techniques that we use in status quo.
Sure. And why? What is your action to overcome those?
Well, we create a new detection technique.
What about this so new?
So our evidence indicates that because North Korea is so small, them testing nuclear weapons would have to happen in international waters. When a nuclear test happens, things called antineutrinos emit from that.
Sure.
We deploy detectors in order to.
So this gets me my next question. What does this antineutrino look like? Where does it go?
It's like a catch to an atom. It's what happens when
There's no energy focus. You can't see them.
It's microscopic.
I mean, it's microscopic, but where does it go?
What do you mean?
You say it has to go into like Hawaii and like.
No. Our argument is that we deploy detectors in that area in order to reach the range of where.
So the act is more about the technical stuff, correct?
Yes, that's the point of the act.
Sure. Let's talk about the second advantage. So we're talking about like disease and why. What are the empirical truths that disease is?
So our test level evidence cites empirically. It says that
But
empirically
extinction.
fungal. Right. It's not human extinction. It's species extinction. Our evidence says that fungal pathogens have the capability to kill off species and return to its original habitat. Our argument is that those mutations will eventually happen.
Okay, sure. And through the next argument that unstable states cause for great power wars.
Sure.
How do you jump to this?
So there's multiple arguments. The first one is that when a natural disaster happens,
Sure.
Environmental refugees will flee to a neighboring state.
From where?
It depends on where the natural disaster is.
Sure. So all of your like rhetoric, I guess, like this goes to the case reps on how we view like solving these in like 3 minutes on why your reps are good.
Okay.
Talking about that. So the way, but the way that we view, I guess, these refugees, what is like, why is that like good? You're saying like our reps go.
Our argument is that natural disasters will affect people, and that's bad.
Sure, no, but like I'm getting to the reps part of flow, where you're saying
What's
what
the
reps
reps
don't
part?
show reality, right? And how.
Are you talking about that? That piece of evidence says it's an argument about representation determinism. So when we deploy representations, people respond to it differently because individuals have different, cultural ethics. So you can't say that one representation affects everyone.
Yeah. I'll get this to y'all when I get it.
Yeah, sure.
You didn't talk to me about
No. It's my screenshot, so it doesn't have.
Just a quick question. What is prep for the game? No, like flash drive. Okay, so is me flashing the one in the computer? Well, it's done. The one is done.
Yeah.
I'm just flashing to my computer.
I don't have feelings about this.
I'm gonna put the cases back.
Sure.
It's awkward. I don't know which way to slam the computer.
You might want to adjust that.
Yeah,
Are you sure you don't want to use this table? It's not stable like this.
Yeah, that's the thing. I definitely would put that one.
That looks like it'll hold.
Yeah, I have it, and I'm just gonna lean over like a merge and build it. I can do the best install.
want to share.
Yes, it's fine. Whatever. Perhaps they don't do that if they get on top thing.
Yeah. Doing some
Is he also the one that
It's called one of the. One of Nate, how many off today?
2. 2 off this.
What is the order?
Order's gonna be like earthquakes and then prolapse. Everybody ready? Judges? First of all, interpretation of development is the extraction of minerals. Lexus Head Note 11. Under the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act, development is defined as activities that take place involving discovered minerals and plant quantities of geophysical activity, platform drilling, construction, operation of all offshore facilities, which are the purpose of ultimately producing mineral discovery. Violating the average traits of platform of development because they don't extract resources from the earth. When they can put any on the for their interpretation allows for an innumerable number of assets of things at the bottom of the earth that don't develop ground. We can't garner any ground that doesn't well, we can't garner ground that the app doesn't actually research, develop, or gain research strategies. Back the argument against development is voter fairness and education. Now on the criticism. Representation of both career and ideological hegemony, not objective data. Shim 8. When meaning is faced determines what can be thought in the meaningful exclusionary character or discourse makes an unintelligible sense of nuclear program naturalizes consolidates the segregated order taken for granted hegemonic discourse for specific interpretation of which policies are attached from meaning and description of regimes the criteria for judging something and the criteria for acknowledging is negotiating to find if you mark something with a label and certain actions feasible actions do not need to be carried out to become a fact in order to represent it. Certain 1999 indicated for comparing business by North Korea X-Fire missile, though the action is not yet executed. The treated as fact which enabled material consequences. The plan's coercive nuclear bargain upholds racist colonial ideology. Gustafson 2. We saw strategy access nuclear hegemony in the international system. We are saying imperial strategy is vision of America international imperium. It's easy to rule among many ways in which nuclear weapons corrupt those who develop they turn their own owners democracies over is interpreting the world with an Orientalist lens to behave as if nuclear weapons are advocated just for powers and part of the natural order things that attempt to develop countries to develop 1/10,000 destructive power currently ruled by the United States representing this calamitous threat to global civilization, cut the guard of global civilization. Their plan was a racist construct of civilization threats. Azadi and Bria 7. Two things of Oriental untrustworthy Islam as threat appear to function ideological underpinning and conservatism. Five powers were permitted to keep their nuclear arsenal in good faith. The U.S. government demands to know the basis of nuclear weapons. Meanwhile, arming itself not good about nuclear weapons is not so apply double standards. We will end up with nuclear weapons. Orientalists, virtual Muslim countries, and their political issues concentrated around the idea that Islam is the source of the issue just plays a central role in the actual existence of evidence of Iran's possession of nuclear weapons. The Islamic nature of the government is that it should not be trusted sensitive nuclear technology. Their intention and consistent non-proliferation policy. The United States and European nuclear power should limit media criticism of official policies. The app ensures apartheid. This is the main factor for proliferation. Ensures unending crisis and nuclear use. Loud 95. Nuclear weapons are fine for us, but not new. The fear of proliferation has been a central preoccupation for nuclear powers. Blatantly discriminating double standard comes from the fragility of non-proliferation regime. The danger that could be confused nuclear weapons were abolished universally. Among these is the interest of change forces caused by deep-rooted vested interest in infinite extension of the treaty would remove any remaining leverage of the non-nuclear states to wield to bring nuclear states into compliance. Extension of the NPT will ratify the existing nuclear order and perpetuate the status quo. Challenging nuclear racism is comparatively more important than global peace. Then halting proliferation. Global 95. It is clear that society can endure so long as few countries possess nuclear weapons to prevent other countries from carrying them. These are close allies. Nuclear powers may agree to renunciation. These countries, which attach value to independence, self-reliance, cannot be expected to do a violent position which enables some countries to build up nuclear stockpiles while preventing others. Non-proliferation can be abandoned. New political world order. Be one and all countries can afford nuclear weapons and capable of producing. If countries that possess nuclear weapons would be a restored measure of egalitarianism in a world effort where efforts to strengthen the forces of work, to cut the card forces of working. Racism should be a priori rejected. METUK. The accept racism university slightly degrees to endorse justice violence. One can find a moral order, let alone a legislative order, racist because racism signifies the exclusion of the other in his or her subjective violence and domination. Just society must be socially society accepted by all. It is a contractual principle not accepted that then only conflict, violence, and destruction will allow if it is accepted. We can have political peace of stakes or accessible. Alternative is to reject non-pollution efforts. That's solved. Brendan 6. It is also necessary for post-colonial work to challenge stereotypes and make inequities both natural and observable. Literary study of the role of land and the test the insights of other disciplines are also need to contribute contextualization to today's internal onset employment and phrase to obscure rather than eliminate crucial connections that are being made by different aspects of our life and reduces the quality of the individual preference to the consumption of agency. And choice need to be rescued during contexts of valuing politics. We need to value other kinds of human creativity, although the ultimate orientation of choice. Ultimate orientation. Now on to earthquake. No one has the U.S. is already building neutrino detection for nuclear weapons with Stellar 14. The DOE is running a prototype neutrino detector that can monitor where nuclear reactor 400 kilometers away and origin raw materials from nuclear weapons. Current neutrino detection technology cannot predict earthquakes. Why can't we just have the possibility of forecasting earthquakes by means of neutrino because typically high energy associated with neutrinos by oscillating length is too large and the resulting variation is not practically observable. No need for the plan. Ice Cube already solved. And National Science Foundation 13. Ice Cube is wonderfully unique telescope. It deployed deep in the Arctic ice that looks over the entire universe and neutrinos from the other northern skies. This cube has new air and neutrino observation. Now to the North Korea advantage. Detectors have false alarms. Those schemes are far-fetched now given the formidable technology and political hurdles. They've missed some of the false alarms which turned out to be seismic events rather than bombs. The use of cushioning materials can make it difficult to work on the exact parameters and test exposure. Current experiments to detect neutrinos from nuclear plants fail. Commissariat 14. Studies on using anti-neutrino detectors have been carried out, but the detector wasn't successful due to its limited design. Detector sensitivities are still limited, and the entire energy distribution anti-neutrino spectrum from a reactor is unclear. Proposed detectors must be within 19 meters of the nuclear plant. Commissariat 14. The team has now analyzed available public information of our reactor. The distance between the center of the reactor and the center of the detector 19 meters. If one puts the detector right on the outside of the zero, while the reactability proximity is necessary sufficient measurements. No solvency technology does not exist for the plant. Commissariat 14. This doesn't require significant technological advances. We need to detect that can work on the surface without reasonable energy resolution. No solvency. The detector can't differentiate between particles. Commissariat 14. The research and studies show that the detector with realistic capability analysis depends on the understanding of shape of the anti-neutrino spectrum deviations and measures calculations that are bigger than the difference, which calls into question how well we can reliably model the difference in uranium and plutonium. This takes out both their earthquake and their proliferation advantage. Their framing of North Korean security makes all their impacts inevitable. Shimmy. When meaning six determines what can be thought as settlers and hegemony, these components will make sense to do North Korea's nuclear program in terms of energy and these practices. Gemini thinking about North Korea. This consolidates specific idea which is taken for granted. If you can merge around something with specifically with certain active companies, will cut the card to certain active companies. Well, their depictions of North Korea as a threat work in tandem with. Okay. Prolif is slow. Multiple reasons. Edelman et al. Prolif good. Disincentivize conflict. Solve nuclear war. Evidence is comparative. Vassal and Bursley 7. Nuclear weapons make the risk of war unacceptable for states. The high stakes of a more surely country is invites retaliation. Risk of some certain states are not likely to run a risk of manner against the escalation comes to world war remains impossible. Victory is too dangerous for the fight. War simply makes the risk of war much higher and tricks the chance that the country will go to war. Supporters of proliferation do not see leaders being fundamentally different from those of old nuclear states. These weapons have been introduced large scale interstate warfare since the Cold War. Evidence is minimum deterrence is insufficient. To argue that security is increasing at a systemic level where the number of nuclear states increases. Cut the card at the number of nuclear states. The fantasy of proliferation is grounded in an Orientalist worldview that marginalizes the third world, justifying genocidal domination of all other countries. Justice in 99. There's a problem where ours are not. The U.S. and Russia have turned their back appeals of various non-alignment nations over discussions on abolishing nuclear weapons. The dominant discuss that destabilizes the system of nuclear apartheid. Okay. Nuclear apartheid. Let me mark this before we discuss it.
All right. When did the Millennium make a claim that North Korea's meaning is fixed?
I mean, look at your car.
No, well, the premise is that you frame North Korea as a security threat. That
right. Evan says constructing meaning as fixed, saying that North Korea is knowable. Is bad.
Your hegemonic representation of North Korea as a security threat that is going to plunge the whole planet into nuclear war fixes their meaning per
Doesn't
your
fix the-
representation of
cross-section-
what I see.
We never
cross-section-
said this was 100% true. We said this is likely.
So it means your
If
impact's
it's
not
not
gonna
hundred
happen.
percent true, then I don't think you have to
Wait,
be banned.
yeah, is that like some accountability to
No.
go back?
No, we say it's very likely. We don't say it's 100% true, which means we don't
I
say.
think
So
that's
say
as close
because
to
impact's
fixing the
not-
meaning as I need to go on like that. Sorry.
All right, how can a card from 5 years ago make a claim about how North Korea is acting?
I'm gonna need you to reference which card that is.
Every one of your cards is before 2010.
Okay, well, most of them are not actually about how North Korea is acting. They're talking about your hegemonic framing of North
Yes.
Korea.
How
So
does
yes.
that assume, your cards all make the claim, if that one AC works through an Orientalist lens, we construct the other as a threat,
Yes.
when they're not actually a threat.
No, you,
So
you
how can
are.
you
That's the
determine
point of your
That they're
act.
not actually a threat.
That's the point of your act. You're funding these between.
We're saying
Right.
that your
My
construction,
question,
okay,
that's not my
okay,
question.
yeah, I know, but I'm about to answer it.
All right.
Your construction of North Korea as a threat is what makes them a threat. The sheer evidence is pretty good on
How can
explaining
your
how.
evidence possibly explain how all of our uniquest claims are wrong?
Because
Okay,
they're built on the idea
the
that
way you posit,
Cross-section checks. I asked you, why are we doing that, right? And you're saying
Yes.
that to mitigate the risk that North Korea puts their
Because they're proliferating now.
in international waters.
Yes.
Somehow that means they're going to be a threat to international peace.
Because they're
I mean-
proliferating, which is bad.
I will that's the biggest we had, but we're saying the reason we're
So
doing
if we win that North Korea is proliferating now, and that's going to be bad,
No,
we win the debate.
no, we said well, it's good.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't matter. All right, the Gustafson evidence says that Bush's decision to intervene in Iraq is colonialist. How does this apply to North Korea?
So they're using the instance of Bush's intervention in Iraq as a sort of overarching example of the way developing nuclear states approach states that do not fit within the paradigm of like.
What paradigm do you want?
So
I mean-
the idea is, you want me to-
I mean, the entire part of the Solomon flow is to get you ready for the rest of it. Like, you need to have a straight focus.
Because their
around-
representations are true.
I mean, you're secure about the secure guys and then like blaming the other, but I don't know.
That
And also,
doesn't
all
answer
your
my
case
question.
cards like politicians are very
My question
central
is,
in mind. I mean,
what paradigm does the YNC present as problematic?
So the idea of
no, I do.
Stack steel.
I can choose.
All right, maybe.
You said racism.
All right.
What's the order?
I have my case notes slightly messed up. I'm gonna start with all the solvency arguments. I have that float on your place. I'm not sure whether you said that. Oh, I guess it's judge.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure where to put them, so it's like organize them by advantage. I don't know what that means, but.
That's what.
You want me to grab that, please? Yeah.
Alright.
You're not.
Alright, I have my case flow slightly messed up. I flowed a basic speech up, but instead it starts on solvency arguments, which I have flowed on the earthquake advantage. Then,
Wait.
like the page with the first argument is the DOE is building now.
Yeah.
Then the slew of like more contextualized cards that have that on a separate flow. Am I incorrect?
That's all good.
Yeah, all the stuff. Okay. So you're starting with no inherency, you have to itself. Yeah. Okay. So that's on the previous page. Yeah. First start. Yeah. Then you're going to have forward arguments that start with detective and false alarm. I have that flowed on. Yeah. Yeah.
Just tell us what argument you're on.
Yeah. Sure. Then tucked up.
Okay.
TK.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3.
Alright. Everybody good?
Okay.
The opposite here, the DOE is building land-based neutrino detectors which can avoid cosmic ray fluxes, which means the detection is still incorrect. That's a UM evidence. Now we can't. So yes, we can solve earthquake. They conceded a culture of geoscience argument, which means even if we can't predict stuff, it still creates strong geoscience to protect ourselves from other earthquakes. They've also conceded that we create stronger theoretical understanding, allows us to better retrofit buildings and avoid mass die-off. The ice cube argument is about a neutrino telescope that detects solar neutrinos, not geoneutrinos, to solve earthquakes. Now they say false alarms. It does not apply because it's not specific to Hano, which is a unique form of liquid cylinder detection. They have not contextualized any of their arguments. I'm going to read 2 more pieces of evidence that specifically answer are the arguments. First, they can't remove their detectors from ambient noise, which means portable deep ocean neutrino detectors critical to overcome uncertain status quo monitoring. You have a year long uncertainty which Alright, and they also don't solve because their detection is based on a quad inverse square fall-off trend, which is mathematical flux. So Chair 13 earlier studies dominated inverse square fall-off, which falls within a few kilometers of the most precise estimates from an ocean set with very possible determination one located reactive and geolocated with 1 or 2 detectors. All their other arguments are not contextualized to our specific qualified scientists from the Hawaii, Alabama, and other multiple laboratories that we should prefer all of our data. Now the problem today. Their North Korea link is not specific to any of our scenarios. They feel proven conscious with our data and our specific scenarios, which should be affirming for the debate. The prolific arguments do not cause conflict. First of all, they are not specific to North Korea, which is the only way they can access spillover. Second, our growing evidence says that it acts as a bully, acts as a guide for countries to use that to increase more bullying. And third is that they are internally solving staff missiles as well as missile diplomacy, de-escalate the conflict. That's Hernandez and King evidence for their Cold War models, which is what they internally cite failed because flight times revolve far shorter. Now they say Orientalism, but problem is comparatively more equal. They allow dictatorial totalitarian rulers to increase violence, pistol bodies, and for equal possessions privately. All it takes to have a country which is be healthy, rather than less often go to like super direct setting, rather than compelling velocity. There's unconfirmed to self-fulfilling and typically lots of volunteers to get unconfirmed create secrecy and inaccessibility. Prioritize existence because value is subjective and can improve the future cycle. Let left-hand women who should not get unconfirmed people leave life will be life will be better than less and opportunity to this time sure or we should be trying to suicide people suffer and to like suicide is great loneliness and those with that fact that lives will not be others to follow. We have conceded our disease impact as well as our failed state's impact increased the spacecraft left sanitation facilities as well as creating a vacuum for conflict which international powers fill in. Now you should they've conceded all of our preempts as well. Default to particularity. Shin says that different representation and set different responses between they have to apply all their impacts to consciousness to the one you see. Owen says that situational cosmology is net better. Scenario planning is good. Failure to do something to least fill in and are the only ones making decisions. And James said that the system is already ingrained, which means we have to engage with the representation sociology part so that people act absent images and have different reactions to different images, which means there was as mental theories are reductions in essentialist, not topicality. LOL, the plan was exploration, learn 7 portable time to be lowered into sequence to recover and move to new locations. We also need because the plan extracts antineutrinos from the ocean floor. No ground loss, core generics still apply and default to reasonability. Make them from in around use points to raise the bottom, then carves out substance. Counter interpretation, ocean development, includes science tech, accuracy inside the international ocean too. Consider the development problems, they lost the resources, transportation, communication, research, technology, environment management, and research development. They implement make a topic, the energy topic, since they have to they exclude building an entire city on the ocean for only resource extraction. Critique. The plan is a normative statement, center the data on its hypothetical enactment. They would be to discourage class by creating one-size-fits-all theories. Epistemic judgments require deliberation via pragmatism. Use of singular methods for ethical judgments over determines value. Coordinating. There's a different facts about all entry is deliberation concerning facts alternative. The identity of the method for deliberation which will be according to Smith. One or rather choose belief by vague mechanical procedures. The alternative cannot overcome prolapse. South Korea, Japan, and China always freak out and lash out, which means only the act is necessary to de-escalate other prolapse efforts. Now, only combining questioning with the only combining action with questioning and solve actual a pragmatic approach is not begin with ontological fact we do not have luxury for decisions until we have opportunity to do so. Resolving space incomplete information, the acting in the world often act someone responsible to whereas other than aggregate incompleteness of knowing. There are no code threats are real, even if our knowledge is incomplete. We have to take every threat by North Korea seriously. Thompson said he seriously makes every movement finding as far as intelligence and operating in terms of North Korea's threat. All must be taken seriously. We have to legitimize the whole North Korea while justifying dictatorial efforts of nuclear weapons are credible China. And less strong security role America plays. Now, the advantage is consistent with the alternative. We learn about the world and understand and verify threats before acting, which means we are a prerequisite to the alternative. All our threats are real. Threat inflation would get our office fired. Their theories are completely wrong. Randall, 9, the action to a body objectivity. Threats tend to be codified, transparent, peer review. Decision makers frame problems on accurate intelligence. They are not supposed to distract people are fired for their Sweden. Also, something is writing rent seeking would owe a certain career over termination. There's no impact to threat construction posture for deal 3 days before emergency vigorously about responsibility whether action provoke that fear are better than action in a state of calm the response to September 11th. Fear is not with cognition shuts down those teachers to people to answer about incapable of being strongly or overrated threat relative to this not type threat related to civil liberty reductions. Now the alternative incorrectly falsified threats and de-escalates. Only understanding proliferation is real can solve swelling for despite frequency of underbalancing. Little has been written on the subject. Self-good threats. There is no study on why states underestimate changes. There are some times why people make political delusions that every level of international relations that help with all these states underestimating coalition not security states. Every new threats have devised with the model consequence. Some wonder whether they're censored by overreacting to responding to elite fragmentation and let the resolve unbalancing. Now, their argument that prolif is racist is ethno-nationalist. They use to assume that one theory is the only way that a nation exists. This is co-op to justify real racism. This loss in the nuclear apartheid argument is complicit with the boundaries of the state. A whole other set of exclusions. The argument announced the nuclear weaponry as the arbitrary rule of power makes accessibility through rebellions to adjusting with history. It makes it possible. The position creates a sustain yet another racial hierarchy in the hands of the BJP. The position makes it possible for the BJP to affect the hegemonic vision of a Hindu Indian nation. Now, util is the best government ethic because of trade-offs. They can only rectify that Bowler 97 more principles fail more trade-off policies, collaborative solutions, policies, duty, deficit policies, are to the advantage of the policies, policymakers have an ethical duty to possibly to also turn to the problems they address. The 2NR, the 2NC is going to stand up here and say util causes extinction. That's not correct because it's circular thinking. Don't let them say util is bad for util reasons. Util is also a prerequisite to equality. Their argument is now the same that people who live were not worth living. That's where Cal's 93 individual status equal required the number of people alive maximized only so they can give to it the fundamental part of the when we consider a few ways to treat some people as less valuable than others. Relations are a zero-sum game. Our theories are correct. Economists tend to, after the Cold War, created a win-win world. But the global economic crisis changed IR. America's country to the world order. China is associated with job loss for Americans. After cooperation, competition, and rivalry are attributed to zero-sum logical but devil IRB. China is reluctant to speak on Iran. The stand up between nations has more progress than to do argument on climate change. Now, permutation due to the plan and endorse non-proliferation efforts. Permutation is the only way to actually challenge power structures. McCormick intends to shift away from security search to enforcement qualities rather than less. This shift does not challenge the status quo without conquering a gateway to critical project. It's undermined without people using the testimony of the country people behave that's where the life country announces them unable to engage with existing power structures. Prolif link turns decay because the status quo increases proliferation under the security mindset. Only our verification regime can de-escalate that. Now, refugees link turns decay because the applicable is the securitization of migrants coming from different countries. That's the warning of the evidence. Also, us versus them psychology is ingrained and fundamentally inevitable to human biology. Yes, and because of evolutionary time given inherent genetic structure that makes certain behavior inevitable, us versus them psychology is genetically determined processes are genetically coached by a certain involves those behaviors that will develop. Permutation to the alternative. It's justified because there are non-proliferation efforts, which means we should be able to sever apart the
So, talk about these link terms. I want to learn like how you resolve the impacts of
The plethora of them.
well, I mean, the two that come to mind are the proliferation.
Yeah,
one.
proliferation.
All right, our argument is that the Kang and Bum evidence says that regardless of what the U.S. does, if North Korea develops a nuclear weapon, South Korea and Japan will securitize North Korea and lash out against them. The act creates a verification regime that stops that from happening. Your whole alternative and a lot of your
You said
arguments are
earlier in the
must act.
UAC that we need to respond to every potential security threat from North Korea. So doesn't that hurt?
It doesn't matter
like
like that we need to
we're still
respond to everything, it was that we need to take everything seriously. The argument is that because North Korea is such a black hole, only effectively understanding them, you have to take everything seriously. There's no way to verify. Both
Wait, so
have
North Korea's a black hole?
there's no like data on them. They're like
Said
very
it, so
isolated.
it's in a black
I mean, they're not literally a black hole.
Like obviously that was the line.
Are you?
All right. So let's talk about this like Horizon and learned pride evidence.
In the
My bad. So, on this argument you make about how like our scenario link wasn't specific to your app on the top of the page flow, our evidence is like paper specific to North Korea.
Your evidence is from 2008 that can't assume a regime change or that can't assume any major factors.
Wait, so has North Korea changed their political?
Yeah,
like,
there was an entire new
change?
leader that came in.
And so then,
North Korea's not.
I mean,
I'm
it
pretty
changed.
sure there's a lot of changes. The Kang and Bum evidence again cites that sanctions between China and North Korea have changed, and that China
But the
has taken
political
policy.
system was interact.
It's not just about North Korea. It's also about the countries that surround North Korea that can react
But
to
it's
North Korea.
centered around North Korea. Like, everything is around.
You're not
It
gonna
was
win.
good lunch breaks.
Let's talk about this other thing. So you say that every time North Korea flares up, we see like radical violent lash from its neighbors, and that's like sort of the internal like
Not every time.
no, but like that's what you said in the USC. Like every time North Korea flares up, we see lash out from its neighbors. Can I have an example of like
Our argument is that when North Korea develops a nuclear weapon, regardless of whether or not they strike first, the U.S., Japan, and Korea,
all right,
South Korea,
one last thing,
react to it
earthquake
and
scenarios. One has a natural disaster collapse.
Haiti, Chile, I guess.
No, but it didn't.
I'm pretty sure there were a lot of diseases that happened.
There was structural damage, but it did not like disrupt the state.
Our rival evidence, like on point, predicted that there was a vacuum in Syria. It would probably
Kind of did wreck those
We're taking
states.
breath. sorry, what was the justification for why we didn't have a parking
There's wasn't one.
No, you said that like we just passed over.
There's a contradiction.
Oh.
I don't think that was the one.
Okay. Okay. What for you? Oh, no, I have one. All right. Can you more left? And then the sticker can be no new parking for the tank. So y'all will get those numbers too. Is it not standing up? Doesn't matter. Yeah, no, I'm not gonna start debating all.
Yeah.
Those are part of the part.
For you?
It's gonna be all
Oh.
It's gonna be all part of the order. I'll say the order again, but it's gonna be taste and pay.
Cases.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Right. So it's gonna be the, I don't know what it's called, I don't know. It's your,
Proliferation.
yes, proliferation. No, proliferation. Okay, so the other case, close it, that'll be one. So proliferation, and the other.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was like, wasn't sure how I should like.
Oh, okay.
No, I had it on. I had it on. I just put it on first place and roll it because I wasn't like I was like I don't know, I wasn't sure where how good about my.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
Okay. So, the order is going to be Cola on face, then McKay. Okay. Few distinctions we need to make on these affirmations, they are key to determinism that we cannot be contextual to their impact. However, I want to say we're not going to prove there. It comes from the cave, but it's our one for me, one for one, actually, our shim, it's their friend and Lord, it's a curious, is in, it's all there, it's all there, we always view the friend as a threat, otherwise, when they say that they social protocol has changed, forgive me, I'll bring all their political ideologies in the context of the river has changed since 2008. Please, the reason why we have their advantage is that they have not just because we don't have the international peace that we didn't have it doesn't mean at all. They're telling stories go with our cages our program has to do. Extend our saying that the program is going to destabilize conflict and solve for nuclear. One reason why is because when all countries are third world and not are able to have these technology are able to they will not go work with them because they are decentralized to cause conflict. And when everyone has a weapon, they will all go boom. And something we know we do not want to have them send our ship. They have their fantasy of a corporation makes all their impacts and when they think by putting the international by deterring nuclear North Korean international these will make all their impacts of the way that we view North Korea will always be that in a way that we will say we need to secure the we need to stop the means at all their impacts just over this refugee will always be the same. We'll always view them as we'll never view them as people or as individuals who are trying to escape. The question is where are you escaping from this? Something that we're when it's the rest of the entire because that's a question of what is a refugee. A refugee comes from a social protocol that we will always say no to because they're built on a rhetoric that is always tied. Let's go to the K. Chaos in terms of games, they misunderstand the link and now some our shim and the representation of North Korea are rooted in ideological head and articulated. This is not a securitized rhetoric. And that was on the case called oops, you're bad now. Extend our truths the apertures a part of the warmth. When we say when we call it racial a race-based colonial ideology, we always see that the brown people are not allowed to have those who privilege or look at their case cards in the context of policymakers should not trust North Korea because why there really is no war, but basically only because they are orientalist or because they are not seen as being a white or hegemon. This is for a few reasons that are better to this plan solves for the plan's coercive nuclear. We're going to hold a racist colonial ideology because only as this is that they we take an event and throw by North Korea. Thanks for another one. This is not in the context of change. They have in the other world from this card. They must combine questioning with action. I think the case also is that's we question the way in which we question the way in which we view race ideology. With these narratives are all their cards in the context of having to securize ourselves from the North Korea. They do the process really blew me why 2002. Now it's changed there. Just say that it's right. You understand why now they say that we have to leave we have to learn about the world. True. We do. You don't. not with any type of they say that souls for racism. We'll get to that later on now. I'll get to the question later on. We're going to the permanent right here. Permanent culpability that remaining links to common collateral damage placed just as ethnic cleansing. Permanent culpability that remaining links to common collateral damage placed in justice ethnic. Equal to Chikai 7. United States sees itself as the main banker of human emancipation. And so the U.S. sometimes the guys from the multilateral most not as much that the most powerfully global literal democratic capitalist liberal system is triumph as one close to the possibilities of such an auto less than phrase that has become part of the political imaginary club of states, perhaps the youth part excellent possibility of culpability must be assumed that the U.S. always after good intention as it makes to which you would suggest otherwise than each instance is simply a betrayal to the original intent which is itself beyond reproach approaching permanent severance. They say that this justifies not competing at the top of your app employs a colonial ideology that we always need to we need to arm ourselves to instill peace. That's just backwards. They have a representation of the 1AC voter for fair education just the activists which got cut out there and see and we don't look at all of our institutions which they did. Now Robert focused on international and public only the north and living apostles for people of color under the domestic warfare of white supremacy. Rodriguez 8. We're surviving an empire where occupancy or limited capture and state alienation is condition presents a political possibility for people struggling against the white supremacist state. We are a commercial race of neoliberal and multi-term globalization and the U.S. state hegemony and domination state legitimately blow away is nothing short of unconscionable to expand significant global strategy for the American war output. It's the time of crisis and necessity critical examination of the progressive level of the non-comfortable industrial complex in particular and disturbing politics of consumption versus disciplines and shapes the work of progressive movement and organizations within the use establishment there. So it's an unspoken politics assumption that takes for granted mystified permanence of the best warfare to come to production, market card at production. Here's where also one of these elements we reject non-proliferation rhetoric. We need to challenge the way in which we this is the reason why the lane terms don't apply. We don't case this in the promise because it allows for an equal access to technology, which means that we don't hear their analysis because it will cause more retaliation on North Korea. But that means you still have an impact. Now they say refugees link term, what is that announcement on the case in which we don't even know what a refugee is. They're always homogenized as being the case, the best one to, and the best we can solve for this. Now they say that at the end of the choice are pretty damn here, since that we have certain behaviorals or this takes all your determinism, but because this determination it means there's a simple cycle which we cannot change because your very total view of the way that we view international policy is a flaw which only is able to resolve. Now big concession here, a priori. They say util solves. I don't know how. Just as that we're able to have peace and democracy, but the question is for whom? You have social and political implications that when we are not comfortable with the brown body or the Asian body, these are all our oriental claims, that we push them aside, or we say that we need to be on top or privileged above them. This is not answering the two AC. Don't give them any what they are spin. A part of question is going to be beyond util, because even if they win international peace, there is still a rhetoric involved in the debate that subjectifies or objectifies the Asian and colored body to a culture generation process.
Oh yeah. 3 seconds.
I'll give you guys those.
Is the alternative solve earthquakes?
One, when you consider a priority, even if you let you solve something first on some level, I would feel like disenfranchised bodies outweighs any attempt of like species generation.
All right.
If you die to life, then
how does the alternative change our definition of a refugee?
I'm sorry?
How does the alternative change our definition of a refugee?
Sure, our British evidence is pretty good in saying that we need to challenge the idea of proliferation, which we have to always prioritize ourselves.
Anything to do with the
because when we prioritize ourselves, the refugee is seen as someone that needs our help, but we don't know exactly how to help them because we've created a discourse in which we
So
are.
your argument is that when we distance ourselves, that's what causes violence against refugees.
It's not even just distance, but rather you create an objective standard and where we view all bodies.
Where did the 1AC do that?
I mean, one, you read determinism claims in which nothing, like everything is compared to the 1AC.
Where did we read a
Two, what?
We made a
On-
representational
On
determinism.
solvency, you say that determinism is key.
We said determinism bad.
Okay, well then, like, that still interacts with, like, you should, yeah, so you're saying that the context is key, right? And that we need to look at the 1AC in particular, you don't do that. That's a different analytic we did.
Okay. Does the alternative defend that prolific is good?
Yeah, we do.
Alright. Other than the conventional wars argument, why is prolific?
Other than, well, one deters conflict.
The conventional wars argument. Your evidence cites things like the Cold War. Why do those apply?
I mean,
The evidence is inside the Cold War and the instance of proliferation being good. The evidence cites the Cold War as an indictment of the mentality of the 1AC. If you don't have us as in this like giant militarized face-off.
That sounds like a bunch of K-words. I'm not exactly sure
I mean,
why that applies to the Cold War. I want you to explain to me why Cold War models apply now.
I mean,
They don't.
I could argue what. Well,
They don't. Okay,
no,
yeah, I got one.
I can argue that
Why
North
is
Korea is
racism
still a very communist kind of
I have
country.
another question.
So,
Wait, so North Korea being communist affects lifetimes of missiles.
I mean, the way that we interact with North Korea is stuck in a very Cold
Okay.
War record.
Alright,
I'll defend that.
okay, that's fine. Why is racism not right?
I mean, it's the way that we view and mark individuals in society. So even if you win that you solve for some level of international peace.
Why does the way we
Because
market
the question is for who?
individuals
I mean,
matter?
you say that
Literally
you kill
everyone
Saul
is
for like peace and democracy,
I
doesn't
don't
it?
think, did we make that?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
It really did.
Alright, last question.
And then you
Make
say,
an argument on the permutation. I'm not sure what it was. What is the argument?
yeah. So one, wait, three of those cards, but like one,
I
there were,
agree. That's not possible.
Yeah.
What is the argument?
The argument is that the way that you know,
well, not that one.
actually, I think that's it.
I don't know. Oh, no, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So we get 54, we use 3 seconds, it's 24.
I might, if I have time, read it all, but it was in the 1NC, so I can go over. Yeah, it's topicality, and then case in the order of, like, I have it on the place.
Yeah.
Depends on, I guess, where you,
Okay.
but
So that means non-inherent, can't predict, high-speed solves.
yeah, all that stuff.
And then,
Yeah, and then I do like a little thing on the,
Where?
on the bottom.
just go for it.
Yeah, it's different.
Can you do the whole order one more time?
Topicality, and then earthquakes, prolif, as I have it, I don't know, we put it on something.
What arguments on protocol? Is this like the rep stuff?
No, this is like the, it's all the songs to take out stuff. Yeah, it's all the commissary 14 stuff. If that makes the most sense. I'll tag it really right. Let's consider it. Where's my mouse? is better.
First of all, on topicalities and the counter-interpretation that development is exclusively the extraction of minerals. They said that we meet non-neutrinos are not minerals. Neutrinos are pieces of atoms. They are not development. They do not meet our interpretation, nor are they the extraction of any resources. The whole neutrinos are just scientific molecules they use to do other stuff. They don't meet our interpretation. They said they were exploration. No, you're not. It's scientific exploration is not exploration. You're taking their counter-interpretation that exploration should be based on science development. No, that vastly overlimits the topic. If we're gonna blow up the resolution to anything science having to do with the ocean, then I can go out and throw a paper plane off a boat, and that magically becomes topical. If I measure the velocity, it's absurd. They said that we overlimit the topic. No, we don't. We keep the topic small, a depth over breadth. We keep things within the realm of actual government action, while also exclusively focusing on isolated things. Needs better education, because we gotta closer, more defined education on what we're talking about instead of a broad helter-skelter variation of different topics. Also on limits, they've got, or on the ground, they completely killed that ground, because we can't make any sort of arguments on research development, discounts on research development, any sort of case based on environmental extraction, skills, fairness, and education, because it's impossible to be negative when we have no ability to compete with the affirmative, especially when the after the things that are both small and incredibly untopical, like this one, where there's literally no neg ground, because we didn't come prepared to debate this something that was so far off the reservation of the resolution. Now on to the earthquakes flow. Extend the Lucy Bella 14 argument that the app is not inherent. The United States federal government is doing a plan right now. They said it was land explicit. No, it's not. The Ice Cube project is rooted in the bottom of the earth, is rooted deep inside the Arctic. It's positing it functionally not on land. It solves all their impacts. The Wang 10 evidence explains very, very clearly that these are not predictive, and that neutrinos are at this point incapable of resolving any of the impacts of the 1AC, because they can't identify between the different molecules or the different particles, so they can't identify when it's an earthquake, when it's a nuclear bomb, and when or anything else. It functionally makes it impossible, especially when you think when the card goes into detail about all the other random things that happen at the bottom of the ocean that functionally disrupt the way neutrinos detect and function in the scientific sphere. Also, extend the NSW 13 evidence that the IC solves. It's a double blind. Either A, the ice cube solves, and the app is not inherent, or B, the ice cube does solve and the app can't resolve anything. They said it was in the context of the telescope. No, telescope is just a piece of lingo they used to talk about neutrino detection. The evidence describes how it detects both atmospheric neutrinos and things that are on the ground. It means that if anything, the status quo is net better than the alternative. Also, they said that we can't resolve ambient noise, but the fact that there is already something resolved, that the ice cube is already at the bottom of the ocean doesn't have any problems, takes out that entire argument. Also, this takes out their Jocker 13 evidence on the prolif. Extend the commissary 14 evidence that neutrinos create false alarms. If anything, to turn their proliferation advantage, because of what they say is true. And we need to take seriously every single risk that we might have nuclear war. Then it's just going to further securitization of the state, because it means that every false alarm is going to trigger mass nuclear backlash. It turns the entirety of their impacts, makes it impossible for them to solve, and guarantees a permanent state of nuclear war and natural disaster, because everyone's going to be constantly nailing their things to the floor because they think earthquakes are happening or hiding in nuclear bunkers. Extend the commissary 14 that the experiments in the status quo fail. This post states all the evidence in the 1AC explaining how their science is in some way capable of resolving any of their impacts. Because in the status quo, there is no way for neutrinos to actually resolve any of what they say they do, because the science just isn't there. Also, they can see the commissary 14 evidence that in order for neutrinos to identify the particles that come off of nuclear reactors, they have to be within 19 meters of the actual particle. Means that even if they're going to put them at the bottom of the ocean and resolve things like nuclear weapons, unless they're putting them in the ocean right off the border of North Korea, they're not going to be able to tell anything about nuclear proliferation. That's all their solvency on the war flow. Also, extended commissary 14 that the technology just isn't there. This explains how there is no potential for development right now, because not only is the science not feasible, but it's far too expensive, it's far too resource intensive, makes it virtually impossible for the app to happen. Also extend the ship evidence that their framing makes their impacts inevitable. When you constantly posit North Korea as a war threat, we read it as a case term, but it also kind of works on the CKM. I'm not sure we floated. It makes it functionally impossible for us to resolve any proliferation impacts, because every time we securitize against North Korea, they just continue to see us as an enemy, and it creates an endless cycle of violence. Also, they can see the assault 7 evidence that proliferation is good, resolves other warplanes. They said, oh yeah, it's just warplanes in the 1A or in cross sections of the 2NC, but it doesn't change the fact that this turns the entirety of their advantage. Now on a framework on the criticism. Framework,
the Octas meet their framework, they are built up on the idea of wishful thinking, which lowers the line of the fact and negative the prior step to any pragmatic action because we disassociate ourselves from their colonial thought. If they read the political arguments, so they don't read the political arguments, so all we have to do is run the default is best for international peace, prefer neg.
I forget. Three, 6 minus 3. 3, yeah. 3, 4. 17.
What's the next slide? For the one.
Think about it. Yeah. There's something else we got. Oh, wait, oh, okay, hold on. 14 seconds. Okay. Yours is going to be, okay. All right, pro list. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go by, so basically what I did was I just flowed the 2 and 2 straight down on pro list. Then I flowed all the 1 and R straight down. So like my flow just looks like 2 and C arguments, 1 and R arguments. And that's on the list. Is that a good way of doing it? Okay, that's good. Physics page, same thing. Whatever they said on physics, I just went in order, and I'm just gonna answer it. Then then it's T. Then critique. The way I'm gonna do the critique is there's gonna be sort of like an overview at top, on the top, explaining. There's like 7 arguments that I'm explaining, and then I'll go line by line for the 2 and 2 line. So I don't know if you want to usually pick up the 7. Okay. All right, is everyone good? All right.
We only do North Korea as a threat because they dropped the specificity of our evidence. Hernandez and Metcalf says that North Korea is especially aggressive now because they're starting to test the conceded uniqueness evidence proves our epistemology true. Also, you should prefer recency. All other evidence is at least 5 years old. We can't speak to the nature of how North Korea is acting now. North Korea and Asia has changed from 2008. Different the countries go through different growth patterns, which means they act differently because the self-interest no longer checks. Now, proliferation is bad. Why is he read a 2-minute card with tons of words that the negative didn't even answer? The growing evidence says that the terms doesn't check because new states don't have second strike abilities, which means it has the incentive to strike first. Also, new states have small arsenals, which means they have used them or lose them pressures. Also, they've conceded the nuclear terrorism war that new states are more vulnerable to death, which means loose nukes is a problem. Also, in both these countries, because they want to act more aggressive, which can lead to regional destabilization because they use nuclear weapons as a shield. Now, refugees are not. This is the refugees argument. Refugees are not securitizing. They heavy contextualize this to our wants, our ethnic differences, and decreasing resources leads to conflicts and collapses of the states. The 2 doesn't get any impact against any of these wars. We've also dropped the disease impact leads to extinction because it spreads through globalization. Now, the detectors won't have false alarms because only specific particles trigger the alarm. The experiments fail now. That's uniqueness for us proof necessity for the plan, not 19 meters. That distinction is irrelevant because their evidence is about neutrinos. Tech doesn't exist. That's uniqueness for us. None of their evidence is about how, which means that they have to contextualize this to be response and not the physics page. Yes, inherency. Their evidence is about landing neutrinos and deployment in Arctic. Can't solve North Korea because it's not off the coast of Hano. They can identify between particles because polar tests have a specific neutrino that can only come from nuclear material. Earthquakes also have different mixing angles. That's the deuterium evidence. Ice cube can't solve because they're not about geoneutrinos, which is key to the advantage. Also not about thin crush. Earthquakes, we don't need to win that detection. We don't need to win the detection solves internally. Just that we create a culture that's good. Critique. Top count. We mean we are exploration doesn't have to be scientific. The app helps map ocean form. We also extract neutrinos. Their evidence doesn't say minerals only. Our counter philosopher law of sea tribal extraction science and development that they massively overlimit one topical after the mineral mining. Even if that is said, they vastly overlimit which removes education or limits are sufficient. They conceded reasonability in rapid pieces of threshold. They can't name your fees that we read them for reading. They stop education. Also, all the words of the resolution check their ground laws. Critique. At the top, here's 7 arguments they've dropped that make it impossible for the 2 and R to go on the critique. First is that no threat inflation is possible because the industry has a high threshold for evidence, which means everything has to go peer reviewed, which means there's no risk of threat inflation. Also, there's no impact of threat inflation. Evidence indicates empirically more occurs because international relations is hard to characterize between including the past is the best measure. Proliferation is real. That's the Schreller evidence. Viscount means you should err to means you should err to action. Also, prolif is more orientalist. Something they draw. The Biswell's evidence says that when states get a hold of nuclear weapons because they have ethnic differences with other countries, it means they would likely target specific religious groups, which leads to more racism. That was when they conceded relations are zero-sum economists. Evidence says that in today's world everything is more competitive, which means war and securitization is inevitable. They don't get an argument to this. They've also conceded Owen's evidence. Situational epistemology and critical validity doesn't lock us into reductionist one-size-fits-all theories. It uses the best tools for each job. This stops the process that comes with the framework for inviting threats. Even if we don't know why things work, empirical validity is a sufficient justification for action. That's the Owen evidence, which means you can vote on the representations of the affirmative having a good idea, even if one part of our representations are bad. Now, line by line. There's no answer to our representation, not rooted in ideological hegemony for particularity that our shim evidence indicates that, our price evidence indicates that yes, security might be bad in general, Orientalism might be bad in general, however, there's specific instances where Orientalism is good, which is also a justification for reputation. Also, it's not a hegemony because we'll affirm that, that'll be later. This is a reason North Korea there's a reason North Korea is a threat. Metz evidence says that bad communication leads to miscalculation. War theory of K cannot solve problems in the context of North Korea because the papers are structural. Fourth, we also conceded that you should act on uncertainty or chronological evidence indicates that if we have empirical validity, it is a justification for action. Now, framework. Role of the balance is to determine desirability and high point of action conducted by the USFG against successful or independent action. Debate is about the national plan. They still get an alternative, but they can't push away one seat. That's the only way to form solutions. Deliberation finds middle ground between distant viewpoints. The perfect one size fits all theory that changes nothing. This is word evidence. We did not drop an a priori claim because all our util cards prove that extinction is more important. Sancho says that values subjective, which means you prefer existence because it's more objective. Also, their logic is circular because they say racism is bad because it's bad for the greater good, which affirms that util is the better standard. Now, Kerm self not separate because it's not mutually exclusive. They consider the market and want to perform like evidence. States can freely intervene now, which means only engaging with the state can actually create accurate data to determine whether when the states should intervene.
All right, we have 3:24, please. I'm sorry, the role of knowledge is what again?
Role of determined desirability of hypothetical action in the United States Code Amendment. As opposed to the blockchain before.
It's gonna be okay. And just for organization, I'm just gonna like call it the framework debate, the time debate, like the Is there any kind of overview? No. Okay, we be going to the one area overview page. Yes, I get it. I'll be answering the arguments on this. So I don't have my personal overview. I'm gonna say key out ladies, but yeah. I've been doing like analysis on why analysis from like good. I don't have it So I guess I'll say the order again. It's gonna be okay. But then you can
One area, one data.
Yeah. So I guess the order is okay. So I'll start on framework, and then I'll address their overview, and then the line by line. Okay. Then you can see the way that we frame framework is that way we are key to a pragmatic approach. The negative is key to a starting point for inclusive policy action. They talk about the role of science with data and representing by positing a post-colonial racist we only problematize political practices more. This is some of the they see that we need to have a hypothetical because we can only address a hypothetical method of policy action. This use any type of educational practices at the bottom of the one we are key to the best form of political action that they can see with your role levels way. You can only look at our APR, which is racist, which is with any of their utilities. I'll get some more. Get more on me. Like when they say that there's no thought and there's no threat inflation. That's pretty kind of the fact that it's really new coming out of the one of they say that everything's peer reviewed. Well, that's not a place thing. Think of the case that we need to problematize into letting express when they say that proliferation is real. We never contest that proliferation is not real. It's the way that you interact with which trouble that we see the proliferation is good. This is where I'm gonna go possibly a lot of the announcement on the case for one with our SHIM, this is their framing of arena security makes all their will always get because we think that they're doing something that maybe they're doing so we can reflect on ourselves and see why is that so they say spillover. We're gonna act that when we start to stimulate claim that we are securitized against other countries will see that and securitize themselves away from the United States with all their impacts in allow us to analysis of the two and see that they say that states will signal stay close to each other like the kind of what like your security for only cost for states to tell they say it's not 0.7 limit impacts in that's not true. We say that your false alarms on case prove that science of violence will are in that this will continue to happen until your impacts cause for booming station of they say that their focus on particularity claim that they are more contextual than more contextual than they make basic orientalism that have one year conviction of really are based on Cold War rather than we need to be opposed to North Korea's whether nuclear even if it has changed our cars are in the context of how we have viewed North Korea in the past. Really have not changed calls for their when I see evidence and calls for their when I see evidence, which is that policymakers are very suspicious of the North Korea ideology. But that's not change the future. No, that's not too bad. Now let's go to the by my line. Since there's no criminal equity witnessing, risk of solvency, risk of solvency, not going to waste a lot of time with reasons to why reasons for why we also especially now there are a few words in the amendment to CKM is why a racism is a priority question, even if they bring up some of the utilitarian reasons, as well as a question for some that they have not answered this debate about. You weren't your bonus that when you do a post-colonial ideology it endorses and just entitles now to that racism stigma exclusion of the other his or her own subjection to violence and domination, and a just society is the threat is one that must be rejected by all because it calls for ethnic cleanliness that they can see on the permutation and that means that there are more just as to why the case cannot resolve the implications of the implications of the case. There's no implication of no competitiveness will extend our brilliance and government always the rejection of non-proliferation of few wants to be to challenge post-colonial proliferation that make inequity seem natural and deserved. Because the way we view North Korea, the way we view other developing countries, one that we always need to be on top of how we need to help them be better based on our standards. Our standards are not inclusive. We do not know how to interact with the other or how we can behave these how these Orientalist claims. And now the second one is the conceptions of agency and choice must be rescued from such draining individual preference and individual preference. This conflicts the act of all of their investments under the guise of international peace when they do not answer the a prior question. At the end of the debate, you can't weigh their utility claims for extinction and moral justice because racism causes for political practices which always fail. This is something that they concede in the two of the money are low. If there's a risk we all solve, you go down with the best form of pragmatism. They concede that coming out of the 1AR is a net value.
Yeah, I know, that's exactly what it is. All right, it's the nuclear monitoring advantage, the, is that really good?
Can you give it one more time?
Yeah, the nuclear monitoring advantage, physics physics advantage, then and the critique will start with the like, permutation stuff, then framework, then
Cross-6 to the 2NC proves they have to defend that proliferation is good for everyone, but they have conceded both a nuclear terror argument as well as a lack of second strike capabilities, which means proliferation always escalates in causing station. You should evaluate this as a tiebreaker, even if there's some dispute on the proliferation argument. They have fundamentally conceded without any concession anywhere in the 2 hours we do air heavily affirmative. Now the national disasters page, fundamental concession about the failed states impact as well as the disease impact, which are both extinction scenarios. I'm pretty sure both disease and increase of environmental refugees are racist in and of themselves, which means you should err affirmative on any of our impacts. Any reason we get to weigh the act is sufficient, even if you don't grant it 100% sufficiency. The fact that this is completely conceded means any small risk of framework should be sufficient to vote affirmative. Now, critique does not solve disease or any of the advantages, which means they cannot leverage a turn space argument. Now, the criticism proper, starting on the permutation, it was completely conceded. Our argument is that we get to adopt the alternatives focus within the state. The McCormick evidence says that that's the only way to actualize change. The high theory cannot change anything unless they actually use the state. This is explicitly true because there was no explanation of what the alternative is or how it solves anything anywhere in the 2 novel. Vote on this on any risk with this. This also absolves all of the links because it's a question of starting point. Even if prolif is in the long run is a good idea, it doesn't matter because we can use the state to change all of those practices. They've also conceded the practical evidence, which says that you should default to taking action. High theory cannot change anything, even after using the state, which means the permutation allows us to use the action-based focus of the alternative or of the see into the world of the alternative, which is far better. Now the util debate, their only answer here is util for who does not apply because they have conceded that it's util for everyone. All of their arguments are fundamentally circular. Yes, util may not be perfect, but it's bad for util reasons that sees the authority of util, which we should default to it anyway. They've conceded that value is subjective, which means we have an obligation to preserve the decisions for people later. That's always a prerequisite to solving racism. If racism is bad, which we concede that it is util, just a prior question, because to solve any of that, you need to be alive and you need to have the ability to make decisions. They've also conceded util is far more equal. Their argument is analogous to saying that everyone who's died with life is not worth living, and that they're stating that it would not matter, which is obviously a bad thing and is fundamentally unequal. Try to make a turn space argument here that people always prioritize like treating others badly. That's not warranted, and we have obviously solved that via the permutation. Now the framework debate. Our interpretation does not exclude them from having an alternative. It allows them to get a competitive option, which means they just need to have links. This is a race to the middle. The impact is effective deliberation skills and dialogue. They can make it one-size lecture. If we don't get to weigh the affirmative, they could get links off some word that we said and never let us contest that, which means only way the app can effectively solve all the policy education good arguments still apply. The McCormick evidence says that education is still needed. Now, the 1AR overview, they have conceded the number 3 argument that proliferation is racist. Our Bismarck says that allows dictatorial despots to continue to use their weapons against people who they don't like, i.e. countries in the Middle East using their weapons against Israel, North Korea explicitly liberating racist policies against South Korea and using it against them. Obviously, that is racist. It's probably far more racist because it's not theory. Yes, saying proliferation is bad, maybe a bad thing, but as a time frame differential, like obviously there is an issue. The app resolves that materially. Their high theory will take a long time to happen, which means even if their role of valid is true, the app is still necessary.
The number one argument was also not properly answered. Their only argument was that peer review is bad, but all the 2SC arguments cite empirics. It's not a question of peer review, it's a question of historical fact. We cite things like 9/11, which prove that even when we constructed threats, it did not matter whatsoever. Our proliferative argument, they de-escalate threats. Our stronger evidence cites things like World War II, where people did not believe that Hitler was actually going to do anything that he did with independent, which ended up escalating, causing the war. Their argument is that the shim evidence said that this is flawed, but that argument was not contextualized anywhere in the blog, and the shim evidence is just North Korea securitization. We have made broader claims to why specific, it's just North Korea securitization, but we read evidence why you can't make that prediction about North Korea because we have to take everything seriously since there's no data on them. The Owens argument, they've conceded that situational epistemology is far better there. A one-size-fits-all theory, which changes nothing. You should center your decisions on particularity, even if the alternative has some turns case. It's not contextualized to the affirmative, but it cannot solve any of our impacts. That's a branding issue. If they haven't articulated why specifically any of our impacts are bad, it's not an issue. The role of the ballot is to determine whether the desirability of accept the action against competitive options.
Extinction is a net benefit.
Oh yeah, extinction are net benefits differentiation. The app
Which means it's a win util.
That's so awesome.
Bye, friends.